Hi there, this is Jeanette. Today's card is going to feature products from my favorite things. I'll be using some stamps and some dies to create this card. The first thing I did was take the background stamp. This is called the lace background. I have a piece of Neenah cardstock cut at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and this is just an anti-static tool that I ran along the cardstock. Now I'll ink up the background stamp with my Versamark, and I'll pick up the cardstock and just lay it down right on top, and then I'll cover it with a piece of scrap paper, and I'll just press down evenly to make sure that the entire surface is pressed onto the background stamp. So now I'll carefully pick up the cardstock off the background stamp. I'll hold it by the edges, and I will cover the entire surface with embossing powder. And you can see that after I put it on, I tap it off, and then I just check to make sure that the entire surface is covered. So once that's done, I will just clean off my surface, and I will use my heat tool to melt the powder onto the cardstock. This step, you want to be really careful to make sure that you've gone over the entire surface, because when we start sponging ink onto this, if it isn't all melted down, you'll actually lose part of your image. So take the time to make sure that you really run that heat tool over the entire surface. So now we're going to start laying on some ink. This is a color combo I used a little while ago, and I really liked it. It really makes the image of the background stamp really pop. So this is Blue Jay from Simon Says Stamp, and it's the darker blue. And you can see I'm sort of sponging it on in a diagonal. And once that's done, I'll take the second color. This is Scuba. It's more of an aqua color, and I'll start sponging that on, overlapping the two inks, and you just keep blending until you get the intensity that you desire. And then this is Hero Art's Soft Pool. So it's a much lighter color, but I really like how it blends with the other inks, and you get this ombre effect, which I really like. Now this is just a baby wipe, and I just run it over the top to remove ink from the embossing. The stamp set we're using is Adventurous Calling, and I first die cut Neenah cardstock using the dies, and now I'm going to stamp them. I find this is easier for me to line things up. So I just carefully position it over the die cut and then press down. And I've cut two. In case I make a mistake at this stage or when I'm coloring, then I don't have to pull out the stamp set again. I already have a backup. So now I'm going to do the same thing with the bunny stamp. And this didn't actually stamp very well, so I had to start over again. So I was happy that I had die cut that second bunny. And now we're going to start coloring. So for the face, I am actually starting with my mid color, which is my E00. I'm going to lay that down where I want the shadows, and I thought that the light should be hitting her from the direction that she's looking. Now I'm adding my E11, which is my darkest color, and then I'll go back in with that E00 just to blend it all out. So now we're going to put the cheeks on. This is R20, And then I will blend that out with R30, which is a paler pink color. And then I will take my E00 and blend again. And then when I'm really happy with how that looks, I'll take my lighter color, which is the E00, and I will complete the coloring. So here you can see I just touched up a little bit with the R30 and the R20 because I didn't think it was smooth enough. So that's what I like about Copics. You can go back in and sort of fix things if you don't like them. So now I'm just laying the base color for her hair, and I'll let that dry before I go back in. So I thought she would look really pretty if her dress and hat matched the background. So I'm just going in with some shades of blue, some light shades. And I like to use a sort of feather stroke when I'm coloring clothes. So I apologize, I didn't have the image quite in the frame, but I did realize that and moved it in for you. So I'm just going from light to dark, and then I will blend backwards back to my lightest color. So I'll use the same combination for the dress, and again, since the light is hitting her from in front, the part of the dress that's closer to her arm is going to be darker, and as it works more towards the edges, it will be lighter. So you're going to see that I'm going to go back and forth with my coloring, and I will add a little bit more darkness if I find that the blend isn't looking as smooth as I like. So just work your coloring until it looks exactly the way you want it. So for the brim of her hat and that part of her dress and the bottom of her shoe, the stripe on her shoe, I'm using some aqua colors, so some BG10, BG11, and I thought that looked really nice with the background. It sort of echoed the coloration in the background. This is E43. So I'm laying in some shadows for her hair, and again I will let that dry. I'm going to color the rose with R85 and then just go in with R81. I really like that sort of hit of pink because the card has primarily blue shades. It's nice to have a little pop of another color. And so for the ruffles on her dress and her shoes, I'm just using some warm gray markers. And you really don't have to do too much blending here. It's such a small area. So now I'm going back in with a darker color for the hair. Just adding a little bit more shadow. And once that's done, I'll go back in with my E40 just to soften up any harsh lines. For her suitcase, I'm using some earth tones, E30, E31, and E35. Again, I'm making sure that this sort of back area of the suitcase is much darker than the other side of the suitcase, so that my light source is uniform on her dress, on her face, and on the suitcase. And again, I'm just blending out with my mid-tone, and then I'll go back in with my light. And I'll add a little bit more of my mid just to smooth things up. This is just a Wink of Stella black pen that I like to add to the eyes to make them a little darker. So now I'm just sort of putting the card together, seeing where I want everything to be placed. I decided it was a little bit bare, so I thought I'd use one of the sentiments that comes with the stamp set. And I decided to use the Fishtail dies to sort of create a banner. So I used 2 sizes, cut them out with Neenah cardstock. The larger one I'm just going to sponge with some of that Scuba ink. So that's going to create a nice mat for my card that is going to exactly match the colors in the background. And then I'll just stamp the sentiment on the smaller one here. And I'm not really measuring the length right now. I cut both of them longer than I needed. So I thought maybe I should soften up the edge of that. So this is this is the Scuba. The other die I used for the background was Blue Jay. So now I can glue these down, and I'll let the edges sort of hang off the edge of the card. And I'll glue it down exactly where I want it. And then I'll just trim the excess off. And I sponged that little area as well. Now I can glue down my figures. Because the embossing is a bit raised, I use some Scor Pal tape. That way I know that it'll stick down and stay put. And then we'll just color up the bunny. So I just use some warm gray tones and a little bit of pink for the cheeks. There's really not a whole lot of coloring to do on this, so it went really fast. I just added a little bit more darkness here, and then I just took my colorless blender and blended everything. And then I used some aqua colors, BG13 and BG11, for his little outfit, so he matches the little girl. So now we'll put some Scor Pal tape on him and just pop him onto the card. I'll add some black pen to his eyes, and my card is done. Thanks so much for watching. A list of the products will be found at the bottom of this video on YouTube.